I saw her dancing with another man, their bodies too close for comfort. My heart sank. "That's enough," I shouted, but she just laughed. "How did we get here? I trusted her completely." "You think I'm stupid?" I screamed. The betrayal was like a knife to the chest. I confronted her and she just cried. "Please, John, it's not what it looks like," she pleaded. But the truth was clear. In court, I stood victorious, but my soul was shattered. Now it's just me and the girls picking up the pieces. Life goes on, but the scars remain. It's funny how your mind plays tricks on you when you see something or someone familiar. I had just stepped out of a shop on the main street when something caught my eye. I looked, and then I looked again. No, that couldn't be true. My eyes had to be fooling me. Standing there across the street was Rebecca. But no, that wasn't possible. This young woman looked just like Becky did 20 years ago. My mind raced back to when I first met Becky at a party when we were both 17. It was uncanny how much this girl looked like her. Suddenly, I realized I was staring. At the same moment, the girl noticed me staring, and it looked like I was making her uncomfortable. She turned away and pretended to look into a shop window. I could see she was watching me in the window's reflection. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Her posture and everything about her reminded me of Rebecca. Finally, I came to my senses and turned away. There was no way this girl could be Becky. It was just my mind playing tricks. I walked down the road, glancing back from time to time. Yes, she was still there, and each time I looked, I saw Becky. I felt uneasy and a bit sad. By the time I reached the Stag Inn, I decided I needed a drink. I went inside, got myself a pint, and found a quiet corner table where I hoped to be left alone. My mind drifted back to happier times. I first met Rebecca at a party when I was 17. She caught my attention the moment she walked into the room. She wasn't a classic beauty, but something about her drew me in right away. She had come in with one of those confident guys, a real show-off. He had his mom's car and thought he was impressive. You know the type, always bragging about their conquests. I always thought guys like that were insecure and probably not as successful as they claimed. I always kept my business to myself. Talking too much could give you a bad reputation. If girls heard guys bragging about them, it wouldn't help their reputation either. It was better if the girls spoke well of you, saying you were nice and trustworthy. If you played your cards right, you'd do well for yourself. That had been my philosophy, and it was working just fine. Something about Becky's body language told me she wasn't happy with her date. When they danced, she seemed to be trying to keep him at a distance. He was getting too close, and she was doing her best to keep him away. I found it amusing. Maybe I decided to steal Becky from him, but I don't think it was a conscious thought at the time. Her date was drinking a lot, which was foolish if he planned to drive later. Becky didn't seem foolish, so I thought I had a chance. Around 11, Becky's date went to the restroom. I seized the moment, and before he returned, Becky and I were dancing. He tried to cut in, but I wasn't having it. I had a bit of a reputation back then. People knew not to pick a fight with me because I always had my friends with me. Her date backed off and joined his friends, glaring at me. Becky told me she was on a blind date arranged by a friend. She said if she had known who he was, she wouldn't have come. She was worried about the ride home since he had been drinking a lot and had a reputation for not behaving well. That was just what I wanted to hear. "Okay, Rebecca, if you're really that worried, we have a van outside. We'll be leaving around 1. It might be crowded, but I promise you'll get home safe. Alan, our driver, doesn't drink. He's allergic to alcohol. 1 pint and he's out for the count." "Thanks, that's kind of you. I'll probably take you up on that. But I should go back to him for now. He seems to be getting restless," she replied. Pleased with myself, I made a quick tour of my friends to let them know the plan and make sure everyone was okay with leaving at 1. Alan was busy with Angela, his close companion and his old van's second love. I just said, 1 o'clock okay? And an arm emerged from under Angela's skirt, giving me the thumbs up. They never paused their kissing to speak. At 1 o'clock, we all piled into the van. Alan was in the driver's seat with Angela half sitting on the engine cover and half draped over him. I never understood how he managed to drive with her all over him, but he always did fine when I was there. The rest of us were squeezed in the back. I sat in the passenger seat. Becky came out of the party with a big smile and jumped into the van, sitting on my lap. To be honest, She wasn't as gentle as I hoped when she jumped in, and I talked in a higher pitch for a bit. "What did he say when you told him you're getting a ride home with us?" I asked. "I didn't tell him. He thinks I'm in the bathroom. I wonder how long it will take him to notice I'm not coming back." We all laughed as Alan drove off. It took a while to get everyone home. First, each guy had to drop off their girl and have a quick kiss and plan for their next date. Then we had to take the guys home, so it was past 3 by the time we reached Rebecca's house. She was worried because the lights were on. She thought her parents were still up, waiting for her, and they wouldn't be happy. I've found that if you face things head-on, you can sometimes work wonders. So, asking the two A's to wait for me, I took Becky's hand and walked up to the front door. It opened before we got there, and Becky's dad, who was huge, stood there to greet us. I quickly shifted from being a playful guy to a polite young man. "Good evening, sir. I'm sorry for bringing Rebecca home so late. The boy she was out with had too much to drink. I thought it would be safer for her to ride with us since my friend driving doesn't drink. I'm sorry we had many people to drop off. If I knew you were waiting up, I would have asked Rebecca to call. Please accept my apologies. Good night, sir." I think I surprised him. Becky later told me that other boys who brought her home late usually ran off when they saw her dad. He just said thank you and good night. I said good night to Becky and walked away. The only problem was that I didn't have Becky's phone number, but I could fix that later. That first impression with her dad was what mattered. The next afternoon, I knocked on her door with 2 bouquets of flowers, one for Becky and one for her mom, who I saw in the background the night before. Becky's mom opened the door. I gave her the flowers and apologized for bringing Becky home so late. Sometimes you have to be extra polite. Then I asked if I could speak to Rebecca. Becky and I went for a walk in the local park, and later that evening we went bowling. That was the start of a great romance, and we quickly became inseparable. It was 3 months before we slept together. My family was away for the weekend, and we spent a memorable Saturday in my bedroom. We were very gentle and caring with each other. After that, we started having intimate moments 2 or 3 times a week. I was crazy about Becky, but for some reason, it took us 3 years to decide to get engaged. I don't think either of us was in a hurry to get married. We were just enjoying our time together. The trouble with sitting in a bar alone, remembering the good old times, is that it leads to remembering the bad times, too. The Christmas after Becky and I got engaged, things began to go wrong between us. I suppose it was my fault. We were at a Christmas party with a lot of kissing under the mistletoe. Some guy was kissing Becky, and I felt it was the 3rd or 4th time. It seemed like too much. That led to me telling Becky I thought it was enough. We had both been drinking, and she told me not to be silly and jealous. Well, that led to our first real fight. It blew over after a couple of days, but looking back now, that was the beginning of the end for us. After that, we seemed to have arguments every couple of weeks. Always about silly things. I think we were both becoming too possessive and jealous. We would get angry for no clear reason. We were definitely in love, and if we had been married, I'm sure many of the arguments wouldn't have happened. Looking back, I see that being together for so long without making that final commitment left us both feeling a bit insecure. Then we had a big fight. I can't remember what it was about, but it ended with Rebecca throwing her engagement ring at me and storming off. We never saw each other again. For the first week or so, I moped around waiting for her to call and apologize. I know from our friends that Becky did the same thing. But then fate stepped in and made things worse. My older brother and his wife, who had moved to Australia years before, were in a bad car accident. My sister and I flew out there to take care of their kids and their business. I later realized I should have fixed things with Becky before I left. But hindsight is a wonderful thing. You can always see your mistakes when you look back. A letter or two to Rebecca could have changed our lives. It was 8 months before I returned to England. I quickly learned from friends that Becky had gotten pregnant by some guy. They married and moved up north. Her friends told me that she was really upset when she heard I went to Australia. They all, including Becky, thought I had moved there for good and didn't know I planned to return. I never could figure that out, as all my friends knew why I went to Australia. Maybe someone was watching Becky and spread a rumor about her. Becky must have thought I left her alone, so she started hanging out with lots of other guys. Her best friend Julia said Becky was looking for someone to take my place and ended up with a bad reputation. Julia said Becky was letting anyone get close to her, which didn't sound like the Becky I knew, but then she did end up pregnant. After Becky left, I didn't date much. I lost interest in seeking out girls. I spent most of my spare time at the snooker club or bowling. Bowling isn't just for old folks. Many players are older, but it's a fun and skillful game. I was better at snooker, holding a cue in one hand and a pint in the other. A few pints and a snooker table made for a perfect time. When I was 25, I met a girl named Sheila at work and we became friends. She was a year older than me and had already been married and divorced once. Looking back, I should have been more careful when she showed interest in me. But a year later, we got married. I don't think I ever loved her like I loved Becky. I cared a lot about her, though. We had 2 lovely kids quickly, and by the time I was 32, I was a happy dad with a nice little house. We named our daughters Anna Otterly Garner and Carol Otterly Garner. Why Otterly? I just liked the name. I always wanted to have a daughter named Otterly, but Sheila wasn't thrilled with it. Since I was the one who registered their births, I quietly added the name for both of them. It's funny because Rebecca didn't like the name Otterly either. Maybe that's one of the small things we argued about in our last months together. For a few years, things went well. Becky faded into my dreams. Sometimes I dreamt that I was married to Becky instead of Sheila. We'd be walking in the park like we did that first afternoon, or she would be pushing Anna on the swings while I pushed Carol. Then fate struck again. A good friend told me Sheila was cheating. Believe it or not, she was seeing her first husband. Her ex, now her husband again, stays clear of me since I put him in the hospital for a bit. It all happened fast. From my friend's tip-off to me being single again took just over 6 months. After the divorce, Sheila and her ex came to see me at my lawyer's office. They both apologized and said they wouldn't ask for child support. They promised any money I gave Sheila would go into the kids' trust accounts. Oh, and they dropped the assault charge. They said they wanted me to be part of the children's lives and that I could see them any time. That hasn't always been easy. One night, Carol had a nightmare, and I had to rush to her side at 3 in the morning. Yes, if you're curious, the children are mine. I got that checked. But it wouldn't have mattered. I loved those kids. I took them out every weekend. For a long time, Sheila and I stayed friendly when we met. It turned out Sheila's ex couldn't have children, which is why she left him the first time. She loved him more than she loved me. Once she had the girls, I was no longer needed, and she went back to him. Sheila even asked me once to get her pregnant again because she wanted more kids. Well, people can be surprising. I got a small flat. Nothing fancy, but it worked well for me and was a good place for the kids to visit. For the next year or so, things settled down. I had the children on the weekends, and Sheila and her husband had them during the week. The girls never said anything was wrong, but I noticed Sheila stopped coming to the door when I picked them up. I would pull up, and the girls would run out with their weekend bags. I also noticed they always wore clothes I had bought them on our shopping trips. I thought they did it to make me happy. Then one Wednesday I came home from work to find a social worker and a policeman waiting for me. 2 suitcases were outside my door. "Are you Mr. Garner?" the officer asked. "Yes," I replied. I don't like it when a cop calls you sir. It's usually bad news. And it was a silly question. He already knew who I was. "I'm sorry to tell you, sir, that your ex-wife, Mrs. Sheila Saby, has passed away. It's a suspicious death. It looks like she may have accidentally taken too many antidepressants. There will be an inquest, and we need you to come to the station and make a statement." "I don't think I can help, officer. I haven't seen my ex-wife in months." "I understand, sir, but the coroner needs a statement from you. Please come by in the next few days." "Good evening, sir," said the officer as he walked down the stairs. I turned to the social worker who was waiting to speak to me. "Anna and Carol need to stay with you," she began. "Sheila's husband has problems. He's drinking too much, and it's been rough for her. The girls have been handling the house on their own. I can't leave them with him. If you can't take them, they'll have to go into care." Hearing this, I felt relieved. "I'm so glad you told me. Of course, I'll take them. They mean everything to me. Where are they now? How are they coping with their mom's death?" "They are at your neighbor's house with their children for now. They seem to know each other well, and it kept them busy while we talked. They seem to be handling it okay. It was Carol who found her mom this afternoon. The girls called the police and then me. They are very smart kids. They probably understand what happened, but it's best not to talk about it. I'll get a counselor to help them soon." I guessed from her words that Sheila might have taken her own life. The girls settled in quickly. They didn't seem too affected by their mom's death. They had been running the house for a while, and soon they managed my home too. Sheila had taught them to cook well, so I had to start dieting and going to the gym. A shadow fell over my table. I looked up and heard a familiar voice. "Hi, John, do you mind buying an old friend and her daughter a drink? You always said ladies shouldn't be in a bar alone." I saw Rebecca and a young woman who looked just like her. She had to be her daughter. My heart ached, and I managed to call out to the bartender. "George, get us 2 vodka and orange drinks and a large rum for me. I've just had a bit of a shock." Vodka and orange was always Rebecca's favorite drink. It had become a joke between us, with me ordering for her without asking. She would usually pretend to be upset, but then smile and ask for the same drink. Today she didn't object, but smiled knowingly. Her daughter seemed to expect it too. They sat across from me. "John, this is Otterly," Rebecca said. "She told me a strange man was staring at her. From her description, I knew it was you. How have you been?" I was surprised. Rebecca had always said she wouldn't name her child Otterly, but here she was with a daughter named Otterly. The bartender brought our drinks. I started telling Rebecca and her daughter about my life since I last saw Rebecca, much like I'm telling you now. Then Rebecca shared her story. She said she was heartbroken when she heard I moved to Australia. Her friends told her to move on. She had a few boyfriends, but then got pregnant by a student from Birmingham. They married, and she moved with him after he graduated. Rebecca said she was even sadder when she heard I had returned from Australia and was asking about her. She felt she'd made a huge mistake. Years later, someone told her I was married with kids. Her marriage didn't work out. The only good things were Otterly and her job. She started with a small company that grew big, and she advanced to run the accounts department with a good salary. Her husband became jealous because he couldn't earn as much as her, despite his education. When their marriage ended, Rebecca had to stay in Birmingham for her job and couldn't move back near her family. Rebecca and I talked for hours. Otterly joined in too, asking questions about our past. It was clear Rebecca had told her about our time together. Finally, we talked about our last argument. Neither of us could remember what it was about. Rebecca almost cried as she recalled throwing my engagement ring at me. I slowly reached up and pulled out the chain I always wear around my neck. Rebecca saw the ring hanging there and started crying. She ran out of the pub. Otterly watched her go quietly, then turned to me. "Grandfather is very ill, and we're staying at Gran's house while he's in the hospital. You know where to find us if you want to. John, my mom has always loved you and regrets throwing that ring at you. She misses you a lot. I've missed you too, even though we've never met before today. Mom has told me so much about you over the years, it feels like I've always known you. Somehow, I knew it was you when I saw you looking at me." She thanked me for the drinks and went to join her mom. I followed Otterly to the door and watched her get into the driver's seat of a Land Rover in the parking lot. Becky was in the passenger seat with her head down, crying. The next morning, I found myself outside their door again, this time struggling to carry 3 bunches of flowers. The Land Rover wasn't in the driveway, so I hoped someone was home. Rebecca's mom opened the door and I handed her one of the bouquets. She pushed it aside and hugged me, crying. "Oh, John," she said, "you don't know how happy I am to see you. Otterly told me everything about yesterday and she hoped you'd be here today." "Otterly? I was kind of hoping Becky would want me here." "Oh, she does, but for the past few years she starts crying whenever your name comes up. It's really hit her hard what a mistake it was when she threw your ring at you. She's been crying most of the night. Otterly took her to see her father this morning to take her mind off you. But I bet her father will ask if she's found you yet. He's been keeping tabs on you and knew you were divorced." "Well, Becky's not the only one who had a sleepless night. That's good. Oh, that wasn't kind of me, was it? But we always knew you two were meant for each other. It's good you found each other again before it's too late." "Come on, Mary. Don't get ahead of yourself. A lot of things have happened since Rebecca and I were engaged. People change, you know." "Some do, but the only change in you is that you brought 3 bouquets this time. I know you still love Rebecca. Otterly saw it in your face when you looked at her mom yesterday. She's a smart young lady and could see you were on the edge of tears all afternoon. She hopes today you might take that ring off the chain and put it back where it should be." We were interrupted by the arrival of the Land Rover in the driveway. I had parked my car on the road so they wouldn't see me. I placed the other 2 bouquets on the coffee table, told Mary which one was for Becky, and asked her not to mention I was here. Then I went and hid in the dining room. Rebecca and Otterly came in, and Becky told Mary that her husband was feeling much better. Then she went quiet for a moment as she noticed the flowers in Mary's hand and asked where they came from. "Oh, there are some for both of you over there as well," Mary replied. "A gentleman called this morning. He came to ask how your father was." Through the crack in the door, I saw Rebecca walk over to the flowers but reach for the wrong bouquet. "No, the other one is yours. Apparently, there is a difference." Becky picked up the flowers and examined them. She pulled the little envelope out and began to open it. Then she stopped and started crying as she felt that the envelope contained something else besides the card. The game was up, so I stepped out of my hiding place. Becky looked at me. "Well, go on, girl, you took the ring off. It's your choice if you want to put it back on again. Or do you want me to do it?" She handed me the envelope. "Before I do that, there are a couple of things you need to consider first." I sent a message on my phone. Soon, we heard a car door slam in the distance. Mary opened the front door, and 2 little blonde girls ran into the house and hugged me. "I'm afraid we come as a package nowadays." Becky smiled at them. "You must be Anna, and you must be Carol," she said. "I think your dad is asking me to be your stepmom. Would you like that?" "I'm Audie, and she's Tilly," Anna corrected her. "That's what Daddy calls us, and we hope you will too. Daddy loves you. He told us all about you before. He said you should have been our mom." Becky held out her hand and the ring slipped right on. "I was worried it would need resizing after all these years." "Well, Audie and Tilly, it looks like you've got a new big sister. This is my daughter Otterly. I think these names are going to be confusing." Now here I am, waiting at the registry office. Rebecca is late, but that's always a bride's right, isn't it? We had to wait a few months until her father got well enough to give her away. Alan and Angela just came in with their 7 daughters. Wow, 7 girls. Alan has my sympathies. But he told me Rebecca is outside and will make me wait just a bit longer. Becky quit her job and we moved into a nice house near her parents. Audie and Tilly have taken to Becky and Otterly like ducks to water. From the moment that ring went back on Rebecca's finger, Otterly has called me Dad. When the 3 girls get together, you'd never believe they aren't really sisters. Otterly has just started at the London School of Economics. I bet she's going to be quite the challenge, that crowd always is. I don't know what the future holds, but at least now, I'm with the woman I love. I feel like I'm 21 again, though I'm not. I have 3 lovely daughters to prove it. I wonder if Beck wants to try for a boy before it's too late. It's funny how time goes by. Life moves forward. Let's take a breather before we move on to the second story. Then let me know which story you like more, dear audience. The comments area is always welcome. Story 2. Ed and I were at our desks, talking about an open case when the phone rang. We exchanged glances. Ed nodded and picked up the phone. Our informant was on the line, telling us that Mario Luciano was in town. Mario was the man we had been chasing for almost a year. He was our main suspect in the murder of a local businessman, and we had alerted police across the U.S. to look out for him. This was the first solid lead we had on him. Ed and I decided to set a trap for Mario using the informer. If the informer helped us catch Mario, we would drop a drug charge he was facing. Ed called him back, explained the deal. The informer agreed and made contact with Mario. Mario was staying at the downtown Marriott and wanted to meet local contacts. The informer hinted that he knew a big-time supplier looking to expand in our area. Mario fell for it. We had him hooked. Now, we just needed to catch him. We met with the Marriott management and explained our plan. We promised there would be no guns involved and no danger to their guests. They agreed to help us. The next day, we returned to the Marriott to set up our plan. The informer called Mario, asking him to meet some people who could make him a lot of money. The informer insisted on meeting in a public place, not in Mario's room. Mario, interested in drugs, agreed to meet people who could help him expand his business. He took the bait and said he would come down shortly. We planned to arrest him quietly as soon as he stepped off the elevator. We heard he wouldn't be armed and used that information in our plan. We blocked the doors and stairways to keep people out, just to be safe. The 2 of us took our spots to the right of the elevators that went up to the 20th floor. We made sure the uniformed officers were hidden. but ready on the left side. There were 3 of them, ready to make the arrest. The informer left, and we waited. Mario should be coming down any minute. Ed and I signaled the uniforms to make sure they were ready. We got into position, our guns in their holsters but ready to draw if needed. We saw the arrow on the numberable 2 elevator change to the down direction. It would only be a few more minutes. I signaled the uniforms and pointed to the arrow. They nodded. We didn't think to look toward the restaurant, believing it was closed for the afternoon. We shouldn't have assumed anything. From that direction, a man and a woman walked toward the elevators, his arm around her. She looked up at him, and they were smiling. A couple, likely heading to their room. Ed nudged me to look at them just as the doors to elevator No. 1 opened, and they stepped inside. Without thinking, I moved into the open area in front of the elevators when I recognized the woman. I stood directly in front of the doors as they began to close. She saw me, her eyes widened, and she started to scream, but the doors shut, and the elevator went up. Ed swore, upset that our plan was ruined. He pushed me out of the way and signaled the uniforms to be ready to storm the second elevator when the doors opened. I was stunned. When Ed shouted to move, chaos erupted. He and the uniforms arrested Mario. Meanwhile, I sat in a lobby chair feeling numb. When Ed came over, he spoke to me. "Come on, partner. I know this is tough, but we have to finish this. I'll drive. We need to book him and get him to holding." "Did you see?" I couldn't finish my question. "Yeah, buddy, I saw. Let's get you out of here now. You don't want to be here when she comes down. Let's go." I followed him to the car and sat quietly as he drove us back to the station. What I had seen hit me hard. I was sick to my stomach with a pounding head and a heavy heart. My world had just crashed down unexpectedly. On the job, I showed my badge to the uniformed officer at the door and waited for him to step aside. A call had come just before I was to go home, and since I stayed late to finish paperwork, I picked up. That made me the lead on this case now. But it was fine. Living alone in a small, run-down place, I didn't mind. Let those with happy homes and families have the night off. That wasn't me anymore. I called Ed, my partner, but told him to stay with his family. I could handle it till tomorrow. I walked into the 3-room apartment, noticing it was double the size of my place. I followed the other officers to the last room on the right. I walked into the room where the dead man lay. His body was half on the bed, half on the floor. The room had stayed empty until I got here. I moved to him, taking in the blood, the way his body lay, the covers on the bed. I looked at everything connected to this man. This is my job, and I do it well, but anyone could see that with all the blood on the floor, the guy had bled out. "Hey, Cross, when can I have the body? I've been waiting for almost an hour. What took you so long? Where's your partner? On vacation?" That was Harry Feeney, the assistant coroner. He usually worked the same shift as me. He got here just after I did. He would have checked the body without disturbing the scene and then waited for me. "Sorry, Harry. It's just me tonight." I was heading out the door when the call came in. Bad timing, I guess. I'll just need a few minutes to see what happened. Do you have the time and cause of death? I'm guessing he bled out? Yeah, Pete. He's been dead for about 3 hours, give or take. You're right. 2 gunshots, one to the chest and one to the stomach. He bled out from the stomach wound. Here's his wallet. Name's Sean Trent. He lived here. 28 and single. No cash, and he's missing a watch and some rings. You can see the marks where they used to be. Take your time, I'm not in a hurry. Just let me know when you're done. I walked around looking for anything unusual. I was about to give up when I saw a small tag sticking out of his shirt pocket, nearly hidden by the blood. I put on gloves, took out tweezers, and grabbed an evidence bag. I carefully pulled the tag from his pocket, looked at it, then sealed it in the bag. That would go to evidence. After 5 more minutes, I was done. I told Harry he could take the body. I handed him the bag and said it should go with everything else he found. Then I spoke to Clancy, the officer in charge, and told him to start asking around the apartments on this floor and the ones above and below. He said they had already started, and he'd have a report on my desk in the morning. The crime scene team arrived as I was leaving. I told them I was in charge and left, knowing they would handle everything. Back at the office, I filled out forms: victim's name, time and cause of death, location, and other details. My name is Peter Cross, and I work homicide for the city of Plattsburgh, New York. I posted the details on the blackboard near our office entrance. This was my case now. Homicide was on the top floor of a 3-story building that used to be a warehouse. It had wood floors and high ceilings. In winter, we had heat, but in summer, the air was just warm. The windows opened so we didn't suffocate, but it wasn't comfortable. It made everyone eager to be out on the streets instead of at their desks. The uniforms were on the first floor, special units and some top officers were on the second. I mostly stayed away from that floor. I spent an hour looking up Sean Trent's name. My police access gave me info on his finances and past arrests. But there wasn't much to find. No wants or warrants, just a few minor crimes. A small-time thief, as I thought. No job, no credit cards, no bank accounts. He rented his apartment by the week and used a cheap prepaid cell phone. The canvas and crime scene would hopefully give more, but I expected this case to go into the open files. I finished my work, turned off my light and computer, and headed home. Usually, I walked up and down the 26 steps to the ground floor, but tonight I took the freight elevator. It dropped me to the ground floor in a minute and a half the time it took to walk. I was so tired and just wanted to get to my apartment and take a shower. I got into my police car and drove the short distance. I went up the steps to my apartment. I checked the mail and found a few flyers and one official letter from my lawyer. I almost threw them all away but kept the official letter. I put it on the counter and tossed the rest. I took a shower, letting the warm water run over my aching shoulders and neck. I stayed in the shower as long as I could, not getting out until the water turned cool. I dried off with a big, fluffy towel I brought from home and walked into the room that served as the living room, dining room, and kitchen. I fell onto the couch and tried to stop thinking. After a few minutes of quiet, I sighed and got up to grab the official-looking letter. I looked at it, not really caring what it said, but finally found the energy to open it. I tore the end off and let it fall to the floor. I pulled out the pages inside. The first page said it was a counterclaim from my wife. I flipped through the attached pages, looking at the reasons her lawyer listed, and just snickered. It was all nonsense, but what did I expect from her? I threw the pages on the coffee table and stared into space, thinking about what she had included. What was she talking about? She accused me of abandonment. What was that about? An emotional cruelty. Really? What was she thinking? She was the one who started all this. She cheated on me with that guy Jeffrey Trousdale. He was the one who led her to betray me. What did she expect me to do after that? Abandonment? Nonsense. I left her because she cheated. Emotional cruelty? I hated her for what she did, and I told her that. Was that emotional cruelty? No! It was the truth. I sat there fuming for another 5 minutes, my anger doing a good job of drying the remaining water from my hair. I told myself I wanted nothing more to do with her, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I reached for the phone and dialed her number at home. Probably out with her lover, I thought, as the phone started to ring. Where were the kids when she did that stuff? She was awful, cheating on me like that, but I was sure she wouldn't do anything in front of our kids. But I never thought she would cheat on me either, so maybe I was wrong. I was about to hang up when she answered. She seemed out of breath. Hello? Her voice was soft but a bit breathless, like she had been running or doing something tiring. I had a pretty good guess what that was. My mind went to places I didn't want it to go. I had thoughts that made me feel sick. Thoughts of her and that guy. Hello, Carol. I just got your counterclaim from your sneaky lawyer. I'm surprised you didn't have your lover prepare these. Sounds like something he would have done. I was going to talk to you about it, but it sounds like I interrupted a session with your lover. You must have been busy since you seem out of breath. I hope the kids aren't there while you're with another man. I was about to hang up when she replied, Stop, Peter. Just stop. I was in the garage trying to find the circuit breaker for the washer and dryer. They aren't working, and I need to do laundry. The kids are with my mother, and I wasn't with my lover. I have no lover. You know that? No, Carol, I don't know that. I know you've been staying with him at the Marriott. I saw the two of you together there and watched you go up to your room. What I saw were two lovers making out in the lobby while waiting for the elevator. Just because you saw me there and ran home doesn't change the facts. Pete, no! You never gave me a chance to explain. It wasn't what you thought. Yes, I was with him, and yes, I was going up to his room, and I know it looked bad, but nothing happened. Nothing. Only because I was there. But if I hadn't been, what would you have done? Nothing? I don't believe that. You were ready. I could see that. I've been married to you for 13 years, Carol, and I know what you look like when you're ready to make love. But it wouldn't have been making love, would it? It would have been just plain doing it. No. No, you don't believe that. You can't believe I would have done anything. Yes, I was tempted and I thought about it, but you can't believe I would have done that to you. I love you, Pete. And I love our family, and that would have stopped me. You have to believe that. I wouldn't have done anything with him. Nothing. Sorry, Carol. I don't have the same faith in you that you claim to have now. This wasn't the first time you were with that guy. You've obviously been seeing him for a while the way you two were getting along. He was too comfortable with you. That was clear. Anyway, I just called to tell you I'm going to fight this counterclaim and make sure it gets thrown out. Pete! Please, please come home so we can work this out. I made some mistakes, but not like you think. I've never been unfaithful to you. Never! You have to let me talk to you and explain what you saw. Please, Pete, come home. Think of the children. Sorry, Carol. You were the one who didn't think of me or our children. You started this and we're going to finish it. I refuse to be your doormat, and I'll be damned if I share you with another man. But wait, has it been other men, plural? Are the kids even mine? I have a lot of questions now, Carol. Questions I never thought I would have to ask. I trusted you completely, but now I can't even trust you to tell me the truth. And to make it worse, I wasn't alone when I saw you. My partner and a bunch of officers also saw you two in that elevator, arms around each other. Guess how many people now know about the two of you? Goodbye, Carol. I slammed down the phone, my anger making it hard to breathe. I put my head down between my knees and tried to calm myself. God. As a cop, I knew better than to lose my temper like that. But that was on the job. This was personal, and this hurt. My breathing slowed and the dizziness went away. I felt so tired and sick. It was good that I hadn't eaten dinner. Come to think of it, I couldn't remember the last time I ate. But I wasn't hungry. I had trouble keeping food down since everything happened. The next day, I talked to Ed Prentice alone. Ed was my partner and my best friend. We went through the police academy together. We wore uniforms together and aimed to become detectives. I got there first, and when he did, he became my partner. We had a good record of solving cases, and we were known as the best in our division. I needed to talk to him in private. Listen, Ed, you know what's happening with Carol. I need some info, and I need it fast. I want the officers to put pressure on that guy. I want him to know it's me who's causing him trouble. But I don't want him to prove it. He knows what I need to know. Can you do it without it coming back to me? Say no more, partner. It's done. Give me a couple of days, and he won't know what hit him. He won't be able to do anything without getting in trouble, and the officers will back you up. They don't like him either. He's a real sleazeball, and everyone knows it. He was talking about Jeffrey L. Trousdale, her lover and her boss. He was a lawyer in her office, and I caught them together. He was a dirty lawyer, hated by everyone in law enforcement. Now he messed with the wrong person, and he was about to find out he made a big mistake. Listen, Pete. I know it's not my business, but Helen has been talking to Carol. She says Carol is really sorry and regrets what she did. Helen thinks she made a big mistake. You're right, Ed. It's not your business. I don't mind Helen and Carol talking, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Carol proved she can lie, so I don't trust her. You should be careful about believing what you hear, too. Ed blushed, understanding my pain. He wisely said nothing more. I went back to my case and looked over the crime scene reports. There wasn't much, but some people saw a man named Willie Jude running from the apartment after a loud sound. Looks like Willie messed up. A tag from Sean's pocket had part of an address in the warehouse area. It was our only lead, so Ed and I got an arrest warrant. We looked for Willie all afternoon and got a tip he was hiding in an empty building in that area. We called for SWAT and went to get him. After a brief standoff, Willie surrendered, crying. We brought him to the station and put him in the interview room. Ed and I flipped a coin, and Ed won. He went in and easily got Willie to talk. Willie and Sean had a fight over a scam. Sean took some money from Willie. When Willie confronted him, Sean refused to return the money, so Willie pulled a gun. They fought, and the gun went off. Sean was hurt but alive, screaming, so Willie shot him again to quiet him. He then took Sean's money, fake Rolex and rings, and ran. Since Ed did the interview, I took Willie to booking. They took his fingerprints, logged his stuff, and took his mug shot. Once he was in holding, I went back to finish the paperwork. A case I thought would never be solved was wrapped up in less than a day. Not bad. It should look good on our record. The next morning, we put Willie in a lineup, and 3 witnesses identified him. We had him. As I finished the paperwork, Ed came out of the freight elevator. Ed wasn't big on exercise. Where I walked, he rode. Where I jogged, he walked. If the suspect ran, Ed drove to cut him off while I chased. He came over and sat in the chair by my desk. Just wanted to let you know Trousdale had a bad day. His taillight was broken, and his license plate sticker was unreadable. He got tickets for both. Then he jaywalked and got fined $50. I smiled and gave him a high five. He grinned and said, "I give him 2 days. He'll be here looking for you by Friday. What are you going to say to him?" "I don't know yet. What I want is information. I want him to tell me everything about the 2 of them. I'll get the truth out of him one way or another. You might have to turn a blind eye while I do it." "You know how bad my eyesight is? I need to see a doctor sometime. Can't see a thing at times." He got up and walked away, mumbling about making an appointment. I smiled as he disappeared, waving goodbye with one hand. All I had to do next was talk to Carol and get her side of the story. I had a feeling she would lie to me. Call it a cop's instinct, but I felt she hadn't been honest. She was scared and hiding behind lies. I had seen it too many times. It was time to pretend I was a lawyer and catch her in a lie. I left work and remembered Ed wanted to stop for a couple of beers, so I went to the bar where we hung out. I spent the next 2 hours with my cop friends. I bought a round for the uniforms and earned some points with them. There was talk about a shady lawyer in trouble, and street cops were keeping an eye out. I feared Jeffrey was in for a bad day tomorrow. I called Carol that evening and set up a time to come by on Thursday for a talk. She was desperate, begging me to come right away. She mentioned the kids missing me. I asked if she told them why I wasn't home, and she went hysterical. She begged me not to tell them what she did. I asked why I couldn't tell them I overreacted to an innocent scene. She continued begging, and it was too much to listen to. I was tired, so I told her to expect me and hung up. She had no idea where I was, and I used a phone feature to hide my number. I wouldn't answer my cell, so she gave up. The next day at the office, Ed told me bad news about our murder case. The suspect's free attorney is challenging the confession, says he talked under pressure, says we scared him with all our guns, claims we threatened to shoot him if he didn't confess. He might get away if the confession gets thrown out. We need more evidence. Damn! Besides the witness description, do we have anything from the apartment? Prints? DNA? No, we got nothing from the apartment. But he told us where he ditched the gun, and we have the bullet from the victim. We need the gun. We need to do a routine search. We can't use his words to start. Order the uniforms to search the area for any evidence that might link to the case. Don't mention the gun. You and I will join them. Willie told us he threw the gun in a dumpster on his way to his car. I knew the area, and Ed and I got the uniforms to help search. He and I took the dumpsters nearest the scene and took turns searching. Dumpster diving isn't my favorite activity. Late morning, one of the uniforms called saying they found a gun. It matched the one used, so we sent it to forensics. We kept the evidence chain intact. Then, with a warrant, we searched the suspect's apartment, found matching ammo and a notebook detailing their scams. We logged everything and made notes. We waited for the fingerprints and ballistics report. They came in the afternoon, matching our suspect and the bullet from the victim. We had our case. Ed and I met with the lieutenant. He called the district attorney. We presented our evidence: the gun, prints, ballistics report, notebook, eyewitness accounts, and lineup results. The DA agreed. We had him dead to rights. Willie was going down for murder. Meanwhile, my team had been making Mr. Trousdale's life hard. His car registration got lost, and the car he was driving had missing plates. It looked stolen. He checked and was furious to find the plates gone. He claimed they were there the day before, but he got cited for driving without registration, possession of a stolen car, and resisting arrest. His car got towed. Mr. Trousdale was furious, but pictures verified everything. No plates, no proof of ownership, and he was caught on camera, apparently threatening the officer. That was Thursday, and I felt the pressure was getting to him. He was about to explode. I told Ed that a word to me might stop the harassment, but it would be his word against mine if he accused me. It could get much worse. Ed grinned, saying that had already been passed along. I was off duty and ready to meet with Carol. I stopped with Ed for a beer and told him my plan. He wished me luck and sent me off to hear whatever story Carol had. I had little doubt she would try to make me believe it was a one-time thing or that her boss made a move and she caved. Any lie to make me believe she didn't cheat. Just a little about Carol. I met her 13 years ago at a Christmas party. It was for everyone who worked at the district attorney's office. We worked closely with the lawyers, and most of us were friendly with them. It was a nice party, and I was having fun. Then I saw her. She had red hair, long legs, and a noticeable figure. She caught my eye, and I couldn't look away. I was single then, with no girlfriend or commitments. I hadn't dated much, but this girl could change that. She was with another girl, a blonde, and they were talking to 4 or 5 guys. I knew most of these guys, and many were married or had girlfriends. I watched as the redhead said something, and the guys moved away. The 2 women laughed. I was still looking at her when she looked at me. Our eyes met. That was the start of a short but strong relationship. Carol was a secretary in the DA's office. She helped out wherever needed. She had some legal training and wanted to work for a private lawyer or a big law firm. People liked and respected her. I liked her a lot, and she felt the same about me. We dated and found we had a lot in common. We got very close. We were very compatible, both in our interests and our relationship. We enjoyed each other's company and found being together very fulfilling. We fell in love. I proposed during Christmas break, and she said yes. We had a June wedding with many friends present. Our families lived far away, so we were alone after the wedding. We honeymooned in Hawaii. We spent the first week inside, enjoying each other's company. We did go out the second week, but we were more interested in each other than sightseeing. Back in the States, I returned to my job as a cop, and she got a new job as a paralegal with a defense firm. She loved her work. After I became a detective, we decided to start a family. Julie was born first, and Carol stayed home for almost a year. She then went back to work. Things stayed the same until Julie was 2 years old. Then Jimmy was on the way. Carol stayed home again for a year after Jimmy was born. That was 7 years ago. During all that time, I never doubted Carol or our marriage. She was a loving wife and a great mom. I loved her as much as when we first met. I trusted her to take care of our home and kids while I was working. She trusted me too. I pulled into what used to be my driveway and went in through the side door. I knocked first, then opened the door to the kitchen. I expected Carol to be making dinner, and she was. It smelled delicious, and I was really hungry. Carol looked nice. Her red hair was down and shining. Her face was pale, but she tried to put on some blush. Her lipstick matched her hair, and her green eyes, usually her best feature, were red and puffy. Her look gave me a slight feeling of satisfaction. It seemed I wasn't the only one hurting. "Pete, you're here. Please come in. I made all your favorite dishes. I'm sure you've been eating at diners since you left. I hope you'll sit down and have a good meal while we talk." I could eat, and it sure smells good. I sat in my usual spot and filled my plate. As I enjoyed the food, I asked, "Where are Julie and Jimmy?" Julie and Jimmy were our kids. Julie was 9 and Jimmy was 7. Both had red hair like their mom. Jimmy was built like me, broad in the chest and shoulders. Julie took after her mother but had my nose. They were beautiful kids. Carol deserved the credit for raising them well since I wasn't home much at the start. I was still a beat cop when we married, but I was working hard to become a detective. Finally, I had more regular hours and better pay. And just to be clear, I knew they were mine. The comment about doubting was meant to hurt Carol just like she hurt me. The kids are with my mother. She doesn't mind keeping them for a few hours. I told her I'd pick them up before bedtime. I would have liked to see them. I guess you knew that, didn't you? Yes, Pete. I knew, but I wanted to talk to you first. We can go get them together. All you have to do is stop this nonsense and come home. Please, Pete, come home. Tell me why you were with Jeff that day, Carol. Tell me why you were alone with him and why you were going to a room with him. Tell me that, Carol. And if you have a good reason, one I can believe, I'll come home. I'll come home, Carol, if you can give me one reason why you were going to another man's hotel room. It was a stupid mistake, Pete. I wasn't thinking straight and was being foolish. He had been chasing me for months, saying that being with him would be fun and no one would get hurt. I gave in, but I didn't plan to go further. I would have come back home before cheating on you. I believe that, Pete. Really, I want you to believe me too. I would never cheat on you. I love you and our family. I would never risk that. Never. I swear, Peter, I swear I have never cheated on you. I listened and let her talk. I wanted so badly to believe her, but I was a cop, a detective. I listened to people lie every day, making their lies sound real. Young women with everything to live for would lie about their boyfriends. Men with beautiful families would lie about the women they were with. I dealt with people who lied all the time. Many sounded so convincing you just wanted to believe them. But they were liars. They lied to protect themselves or avoid trouble. They always had reasons to lie, and they did. The stronger the reason, the better the lie. Carol had every reason to lie. She had me, her marriage, her kids, and the home we worked so hard for. She would lie to protect it all. She seemed sincere and sounded like she was telling the truth. And I wanted so much to believe her, to keep my marriage, home, and family together. I wanted it so badly, but I was a cop. I needed proof. I needed it before making my decision. After hours of talking, asking questions, and listening to answers that were convincing, yet sometimes conflicting, I finally told her I wanted to believe her but needed time. Time to think it all through. She pleaded, mentioned the kids again, tried everything, but I still said I needed time. Eventually, I stood up, thanked her for dinner, and walked quickly out of the house to my car. My heart was breaking. If I had stayed any longer, I would have given in and taken her into my arms. I wanted so much to just hold her, love her, and forget my doubts. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I drove back to my small, dingy room in a bad part of the city and cried. I was a tough cop who had seen it all, but that night I just sat in the room's single chair and cried. I loved Carol with all my heart. I had loved her since the first night I met her and felt like I died when I saw her with that man in that hotel. I never understood what it meant to die from a broken heart until then. I finally understood what those women felt when they lost a son, a husband, or a lover. I understood the man falling apart when his wife was found dead. I understood the grief of a father for his daughter, a husband for his wife. I understood. It was daylight when I opened tired eyes to face a new day alone. I looked around my small room and felt a shiver. I had to make a decision soon. I had to find out the truth so I could move on. Living like this was punishment I didn't deserve. I needed information, and if that guy didn't come to me today, I was going to find him. And if that happened, he wouldn't be happy. When I got in, I found 2 messages from Carol wanting me to call her and one from that guy asking me to call him. I tossed all 3 in the trash and went over to see what Ed was doing. He had come in early to finish our case against Willie Jude since the DA decided to go forward. We would be called to testify, and we needed to make sure everything was perfect. Ed nodded to me but kept working, so I went to get some coffee. I brought 2 cups back, placed one in front of him, and sat in the chair next to his desk. There, done. We have an airtight case, and our paperwork is perfect as usual. No lawyer is going to find anything wrong with this case. Another solved homicide to add to our record thanks to our hard work and understanding of crime. I laughed out loud, glad Ed was my partner. He was good for me, and I needed him now more than ever. He knew all about my troubles and stayed quiet unless I asked for advice. He would never tell anyone, not even his wife Helen. He and Helen had been together longer than Carol and I and had 3 kids to prove it. Ed Jr., Tommy, and Alice. Ed Jr. was 12, and Tommy and Alice were 10-year-old twins. He had a great family, almost as good as the one I thought I had until Carol cheated. Good job on that confession, even if they challenge it. It was clean and by the book. If the DA can't handle it, that's his problem. We nailed it either way. Right. Any word from that guy? I heard he was pretty anxious yesterday. They said he was looking to talk to anyone who could help. No names were mentioned. He called and left a message for me. Not going to call him back. He should know better. Thinks he can fool me? I'm not as naive as he thinks. Ed shrugged, and we got back to work. We had several open cases and were waiting for leads on some of them when the desk sergeant called from downstairs. Hey, Cross, there's a sleazy lawyer here to see you, wants to come up. What should I do with him? I looked at Ed, thought it over, and then made a quick decision. Put him in the holding room. I'll be down soon, I said. He laughed and replied, You got it. I hung up the phone and told Ed that I had a visitor. Ed nodded, looking curious, but I just shook my head. He didn't need to get involved. This was something I had to handle on my own. I stood up, took my badge and gun, and went downstairs to where the uniforms from the 16th District worked. I walked over to the desk sergeant, and he pointed to the left, meaning the less cooperative witness was in the smallest holding room. These rooms were where we kept people who were less than helpful during questioning. I opened the door and looked at Jeff Trousdale. He was younger than me, tall and well-built, though he had a slight belly from good living. His expensive suit and tie probably cost more than my monthly salary. Jeff had long black hair and dark brown eyes. Women probably found him attractive. His lips were pressed tight, showing he was angry. I was ready to see how I could change that. I nodded for him to follow me and walked back the way I came. I stopped at the desk and asked the sergeant for an interview room at the back of the building. He looked at his schedule and held up 2 fingers, signaling I could use interview room 2. I didn't look back to see if Jeff was following. We walked through rows of desks where cops were sitting, standing, or lounging. Their eyes followed Jeff, showing no love, and he noticed it. I reached the room, held the door open for him, and as he walked past, I could smell his fear. I shut the door behind us and locked it. The room had 2-way glass and recording equipment, but as a cop, I knew how to disable them. I made a signal at the 2-way mirror to ensure privacy. "All right, start talking," I said, making it clear this wasn't a friendly chat. I sat down, calm and in control. What the heck is going on? I can't make a move without a cop giving me trouble. Someone's trying to mess me up, and it's working. I've thought about suing the city, but then I heard you're the guy to see. I don't want to sue unless I have to. Nobody wins that way. So do you want something? Don't you recognize me? My name is Pete Cross, and you've been seeing my wife, Carol. Jeff's face went white, and his eyes widened. He looked at me as if I had grown horns. He started to stutter, his hand waving like he was trying to fend me off. I waited, watching realization dawn on him. "Oh no, wait, Cross. It's not what you think. I can explain." My training kicked in. I had interviewed all kinds of people in this room, and I had broken them all. This was my territory, not his. See, Jeff? You're already making me mad. I took time off from my busy job because I thought you wanted to talk, and all you're doing is making excuses. Maybe you should just go back to your life and stay out of trouble. If you live clean, the cops won't bother you. Listen, it's not what you think. Let me explain. Please. Explain what? You've been seeing my wife, and we both know it. So what don't I understand? She came on to you? It's not your fault? Wrong place, wrong time? I've heard it all, Jeff, so save it. You're a lawyer, and you wouldn't know the truth if it hit you. He slumped in his chair, looking less like a lawyer and more like a man doomed to a life sentence. His eyes were glassy, and he seemed ready to cry. I had no sympathy. I was about to stand when he said, "Okay, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything. Just ask. Tell me the whole story. When it started, why it happened, how often you met. Don't lie, because if you do, this ends now, and I'll make your life miserable. Understand? Tell me the truth, or your life will be hell." He nodded, straightened up, and began. We got together about a month ago. I convinced her to celebrate with drinks after we won a big case. I kept giving her drinks until she was tipsy. We went to a room I booked, and we were together for over an hour. He looked scared, but I kept my face blank, even though his words felt like knives. This was worse than I had imagined. After that, she tried to resist, but I used what I knew and threatened to tell you. She got scared and gave in. We met again a week later, left work early, and went to the Marriott. We spent 3 hours together. She is a great person. And you should know, she never spoke badly about you. If I even mentioned you, she would get very upset. She slapped me every time I said something about you or her kids. She really cares about you, man. Listen, we did it maybe 3 or 4 times, but it was just physical. She wasn't into it after the first time, and I got tired of it too. But she's a beautiful woman. There's nothing more to it than that, and it's over now. She quit, you know. That day was meant to be the last time. I even threatened to tell you, but she insisted it was over. I tried once more, but she refused. We were just going back to the room to check out. I haven't seen her since that day. She said it was over and that she never wanted to see me again. The very next day, she called in and resigned. She hasn't even come back to get her stuff. I was struggling not to hit him. I had my gun. I could probably make it seem like a justified shooting, but I was a cop. I believed in the law. I had to let him go. He had broken no laws, so he was free to leave. I stood, walked to the door, unlocked it, and pointed. "Get out of here and stay out of my sight." I won't make any promises or threats. Just stay away from me. What about the harassment? Is that going to stop now? I don't know anything about that, but maybe I'll talk to some people who might. I wouldn't push it if I were you. Now is not a good time to push me. He heard me because he jumped up and almost ran out of the room. I didn't even watch him leave. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was only a few minutes. I had what I needed, but it was bad news. I knew now that Carol had lied to me. It told me something. I slowly got up, walked out of the room, and made my way through the uniforms back to the elevator. I was so upset that I took the elevator to my desk. You look like you just lost your best friend. Bad news. Ed was sitting at his desk watching me. I guess the sergeant had called him to let him know what was happening. Very bad, worse than I had hoped, but now I know, and they say knowing is a good thing. Well, guess what? That's a lie. Knowing can be a real kick in the face. Hey, buddy, let's take some lost time. I'll clear it with the LT. He disappeared and came back a few minutes later. He grabbed me by the collar and pulled. Knowing I would come up ready to fight, he was already moving toward the elevator. I followed, my anger starting to cool. The energy it took to remain angry was drained by the news I had just learned. Ed and I spent the next 2 hours talking about my options and having a few beers. I needed the alcohol to help me think straight. The pain was just beginning, and I was looking at the rest of my life without my wife of 13 years. The hardest part was the kids. You can live without a spouse, even if it is painful at first, but it's not the same with kids. They are born, and they work their way into your heart without you even noticing. My kids were my life. Everything I did was for them and their future. I thought I was doing it with my wife's help, but I was wrong. We made a list of things I had to do. The first was to confront my wife and let her know that I knew what she did. And I should contact a lawyer to tell me how to proceed. I wanted to make sure she couldn't hurt me again in court like she did at home. That was certain. Ed suggested that I contact the lawyer first, but I couldn't wait. I had to break with Carol first and then let the chips fall where they may. We parted, and I decided there and then to confront her. When I came home that evening, Carol was surprised but happy to see me. I spent some time with the kids, catching up on what I had missed and promising to spend the weekend with them. They wanted to know when I was coming home, but I was vague, telling them I was involved in a big project and needed to make sure it went smoothly. They believed me when I told them it was a secret project, and they had to keep it to themselves. They went to their rooms to work on their computers and finish their homework. That left Carol and me alone. She sat down with me on the couch, and we had coffee. I told her again that I was having trouble with her story and asked her to go through it again to help me understand. She smiled, assured me she had absolutely nothing to hide, and started a long story about Trousdale trying to seduce her and her steadfast refusal. She said the day at the hotel was a mistake, but that I had arrived just in time to save her and our marriage. She finished her story with a look of triumph. She thought she had made up a tale that I had no choice but to believe. If I hadn't talked to Jeff earlier, I probably would have. She sounded so sincere and truthful. Her story was so well thought out that it felt almost real. But she had been lying to me for the past month or more and had practice. What hurt the most was that she chose to lie to me and betray me with Jeff, both during the affair and now after I knew the truth. That hurt. The lies hurt the most. The physical affair was something we could have discussed, and I could have tried to get past, but her lying compounded the betrayal. It showed me how little she respected me. I had no choice. Now was the time to end this. I looked directly into her eyes and steadied myself. I had to stay calm but tell her what I knew. I took a deep breath and began. I talked to the person you were seeing today, I said, determined to face this before I lost my nerve. She was still my wife. I had been ready to believe in her loyalty, but my pride was shattered. She had broken my trust and taken away my self-respect. For those who don't understand, think about basic human feelings. Yes, it's simple, but it's real. What are you talking about, Pete? I told you I don't have anyone else. Why don't you believe me? Can't you see that I wouldn't do that? He told me how he first slept with you a month ago after you celebrated a big win. He got you drunk, took you to his hotel room, and you were together for over an hour. A week later, it happened again for 3 hours, and a few more times after that. I believe him because he had reasons to tell the truth. Carol looked at me like she was scared I might hurt her. That fear was real, and it hit me that maybe she didn't know me at all after 13 years. But then, given what she did, perhaps she never really understood me. I waited for her to deny it. He told you? Why would he do that? Why would you believe him? Her voice shook and her face turned pale. She knew her world was falling apart. Because I have friends on the force who saw you two together. They don't like him and made his life hard. They let him know I could make it stop. So he came to me and told me everything. Pete, please let me explain. I made a huge mistake. I had too much to drink and I think he gave me something. I lost control. After that, he threatened to tell you, so I went along out of fear. I didn't enjoy it and I tried to resist. Believe me, please. No, I don't. I saw your face. You were smiling, enjoying it. You looked happy and you even kissed him. You had already been together that day. So no, I don't believe you. Please, Pete, don't push me away. I love you. I made a mistake and I'm sorry. I promise it won't happen again. Tell me you still love me, please. Love has nothing to do with it, Carol. Of course, I still love you. You are the mother of my children and I've loved you since we met. But I can't trust you anymore. Marriage needs trust. I have to be away from my job and trust that you take care of everything. I've never betrayed your trust, but you have. How can I live with you now? She cried steadily. I hated seeing her cry and part of me wanted to comfort her. But I had to stay firm. She betrayed me, and now I felt utterly alone. She did that to me and I hated her for it. I need some time to make arrangements. Get a good lawyer. I'm angry and might try to hurt you, so protect yourself. I'll file for divorce. We can split everything equally. We'll sort out child support fairly. Carol stopped crying when I mentioned divorce. She shook her head and said, no, over and over. I ignored her and continued. I wanted this over with quickly. I couldn't stand to look at her. I stood to leave, but she pushed her chair back violently. No, I'll fight you every step. I'll get a good lawyer and stop you. I won't give up on our marriage. I made a mistake, but it meant nothing to me. You know I love you, and you love me too. You're just too mad to see that. But you will once you calm down. She moved toward me with her hands out, pleading. I stepped back, keeping the table between us. I was too weak to take more of this. I just wanted to escape. I know I deserve your anger and that you're hurting. I want to die knowing I made things right. I just want to die and not think about what I did. I wish I could, but I can't. You and the kids are my world, and I won't let you break us apart. We belong together, that's the truth. No, Pete, I won't let you tear us apart. I almost did with my actions, but we're still here. We're still a family, and I've learned. I'll never do anything like that again. You just need to forgive me, Pete. That's all you need to do. Just forgive me, and I'll show you it was the right thing. Just forgive me and give me another chance. Everyone deserves a second chance. As a cop, you know that. I had to leave. This was killing me. I was hurting so much from her betrayal, and now she was begging me for a second chance. I wanted to let her back in, to not be alone anymore. But I couldn't. I couldn't just forgive her. I was in too much pain, and all I wanted was to hurt her back. She had hurt me deeply. I have to go. I'll let you know who to call and who will represent me. I have to go. I turned and almost ran out of the house. I got into my car and drove as fast as I could away from her and from the life I used to have. Almost 2 weeks had passed since my argument with Carol, and things were about to change. I was still staying in a small room, but I had arranged to move back into the house. Carol would stay in the master bedroom on the second floor, and I would take the spare room on the first floor. It had its own bathroom and entrance. It used to be called a mother-in-law apartment. This plan was because of money problems. As a cop, I didn't make much money, and Carol's job as a paralegal wasn't much better. She made almost as much as I did, but we had many expenses. The house, the kids, the 2 cars, and the utilities, plus food and clothing. I had my lawyer contact her lawyer, and she agreed. She wanted me home, and this worked for her. I knew what she was thinking, but I didn't care. I wanted to be closer to my kids, and this would do that. My lawyer didn't like it, but he agreed if we stayed in separate rooms. He thought it would look good to the judge. We were going to court. Carol fought me every step of the way. She argued about child support, and even though she got a new job quickly, she claimed she had to quit her job to stay home with the kids. She brought up other issues, and each one cost me time and money. She was smarter than I thought, but she was a paralegal. She had knowledge I didn't. But I was stubborn and kept fighting. The department's legal team helped me for free. I saw my kids every evening and on weekends. I worked as little as possible, and Ed supported me so I could be home before bedtime. I ate dinner with them on weekends, but during the week, I ate at diners. I was losing weight and eating badly, but I was determined to manage on my own. It's funny because usually it's the wife who struggles to get by on her own. When I was alone in my room at night, Carol always knocked to see if I needed anything. Each night when I came home, the bed was made, and fresh towels were in the bathroom. Everything I needed was there and neatly laid out. I understood her plan and appreciated it, but I didn't let it change my mind. Once I was in for the night, I rarely opened the door, but she kept making sure I knew she was there. It was painful, knowing she was so close. It was torment, but I resisted the urge to open the door. When it got too hard, I imagined her with the man she cheated with. That thought helped for a while, but it soon stopped working. Instead, I tried to distract myself and stay strong. Our lawyers kept fighting, and after a month, we were finally called to court to explain why we couldn't agree. I arrived to find her and our lawyers waiting. She had asked for a meeting before we had to go before the judge. My lawyer thought it was a good idea to settle this calmly rather than have a judgment forced on us. He said I wouldn't like what the judge decided. I agreed out of desperation. We were led to a small room with one desk and 4 chairs. I went in, followed by Carol. She looked around, sighed, and took a seat. I did the same across from her. I signaled for her to start. "When are you going to forgive me and help me get our life back? You know this isn't what either of us wants. I messed up, and I promise it won't happen again. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make things right. Just tell me what you need and I'll do it. Do you want your own affair? Fine. I won't ask any questions, and I'll wait until you're done. In the meantime, I'll stay faithful." She was serious. I could tell. I did know her very well, and I knew when she was being truthful. She had never really lied to me before because I never asked any questions. I trusted her completely. I never thought to doubt her, so there was no reason for her to lie. "I can't forgive you. Not yet. Every time I see you, I think about you and him. I have nightmares about it and wake up scared. How do you think I can live like this?" "Oh, Pete, it wasn't like that at all. It was never like how it was with you and me. It was just quick, with no love or care. What you saw in the lobby was me trying to finish it. I wasn't enjoying it. I just wanted it to end, and that day was the last time for us. He had to tell you that I was ending it that day." I knew that was true, but it didn't matter. She still cheated on me. She broke everything I believed about her, and for what? What did she gain from it? I had never asked her why. "Carol, tell me why you did it. Why would you risk everything we had for a silly affair? Why?" It was stupid and selfish. I spent a lot of time with Jeff. He was smart and smooth. He always flattered me, told me how beautiful I was and how much he admired me. He talked about our kids and you and how lucky you were to have me. He also made it clear he wanted me. He kept after me, and I began to look forward to his compliments and attempts to win me over. I had no trouble saying no to him, but eventually, I wanted to see what it was like. I thought it would be safe to try it once. It didn't mean more to me than that. What about me and the kids? Did you ever think about how it would hurt me if I found out? You were never supposed to know. Never. It was my secret, and after I felt guilty, I knew I could never tell you. It ate at me, but even so, I did it again. I'll never understand why. I should have told you and stopped right away. I keep asking myself why I didn't. I listened, but nothing made sense. Her words only brought more pain. I realized that nothing she said would make it better. I had to live with it or move on. I stood up and said as calmly as I could, "What can we do to make this faster?" She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Nothing. I haven't changed my mind. I don't want this divorce, and I'll fight it. You'll have to force me out because I won't leave quietly." With that, she left the room. We were going to court. The judge wasn't happy. He told us both that the lawyers would figure something out or he would decide for us. He said we were foolish to put our kids through this. I had heard judges talk like this before, so I didn't listen. When he hit the gavel, I stood and left quickly. I went back to work. Ed and I had a new case, a drug deal gone bad. 2 dead black men and 1 dead Hispanic were in the morgue. It was the start of a nasty drug war between rival gangs. The Hispanics were winning 2-1, but the blacks vowed to get even. Ed and I were trying to stop it, but it wasn't working. We were supposed to meet one of the leaders that night. We had a good idea who the shooters were and wanted to stop them. But first, we had to end the violence. Ed and I made our plans. We went in heavily armed. The meeting was in a bad part of town, but we knew it well. We parked the car in a good spot, made sure we had plenty of ammo, and told dispatch where we were. Dispatch said there were patrol cars nearby. We did all we could and then waited for Booker to show up. He was the leader who could stop the revenge killings. If he would. From the start, the meeting was a mess. 3 Hispanic men showed up, looking confused. We were in neutral territory, so they were safe from the other gangs. But we didn't expect them, and it looked bad for us. The man we were supposed to meet never showed up. Now, we were in a bad spot. Ed and I had our guns out, facing the 3 angry men who thought we were setting them up. We tried to explain, but someone started shooting. All hell broke loose. I remember Ed shouting, me calling for backup, yelling, "Shots fired!" and both of us shooting back. We tried to reach the car for cover when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Then, everything went quiet. I saw Ed looking at me in shock. He fired a few more shots and then started talking to me, but I couldn't hear anything. I knew I had been shot. I thought Carol would be happy our divorce wouldn't be a problem since I would soon be dead. Suddenly I realized I would miss her. I loved her deeply. The sadness hit me hard, my eyes watered, and my heart raced. I wished I had tried harder to work things out, to forgive her, but it was too late. I was afraid my lack of forgiveness would send me to hell. The pain from those thoughts was overwhelming in my final moments. That was the last thing I remembered. I woke up suddenly, feeling scared. I looked around to see if the shooting was still happening and if we were still in danger. Even though I couldn't hear any more gunfire, I felt like it had to be. I tried to stand up but couldn't. Then, someone gently pushed me back down. I didn't have the strength to fight them and let myself relax. I was surprised to feel something soft under me instead of hard concrete. I tightly closed my eyes, like we were trained to do in the academy, and then opened them again. I saw Carol's eyes staring into mine. She was above me, looking down with tears in her eyes. I blinked a few times, trying to understand what was happening. Why would she be here in the middle of a shootout? She could have been hurt. I tried to tell her that, but my mouth wouldn't work right. All that came out were some mumbles. Then it hit me. I could hear. And there were no sounds of gunfire, no yelling, no sirens, nothing. I closed my eyes and tried to think. Pete, open your eyes. It's me, and you're okay. You're in a hospital. You were shot, and you've been asleep for a long time. You're safe, Peter. Open your eyes. Her words cleared up some of the questions in my mind. The gunfire had stopped because I had been hit and taken to a hospital, and I was alive. That was the biggest surprise of all. I was alive. I opened my eyes and saw Carol smiling down at me. When she saw that my eyes were staying open, she stepped back and smiled. She seemed so happy. She turned to call a nurse. I watched her go out into the hall holding the door frame as she waved for someone to come. I noticed she was wearing a plain sweater over an old dress. That seemed so out of place for her. After that, everything was confusing for a while. Doctors and nurses were busy doing things to me and to the machines around me. I didn't feel much pain from my wounds, but my head was fuzzy and my stomach was upset. None of my muscles would listen to me. I just wanted to sleep for a week or more, anything to feel like myself again. I shut my eyes and drifted away. The next 2 days were strange. Later that day, a nurse was unhooking me from the machines. I had to sit up, lie back, sit up again. It felt like I was a puppet. The best part was that I felt little pain in my chest. The doctor said they had removed the bullet, which was lucky because it was very close to my heart. If it had stayed in, it might have moved and killed me. I had been unconscious for almost 48 hours. He told me my condition was now stable and that I could leave in a few days if nothing changed. Ed and some friends from the department came to visit. Seeing them made me feel better. Good friends help you recover faster. Carol brought my kids, Julie and Jimmy, to see me even though they were too young according to hospital rules. Being part of the police department gave us some privileges. Seeing my kids was the best part of my day. I needed them more than ever. Carol was acting different, and I was trying to figure out why. We didn't talk about her affair. She was being very caring, always asking if I needed anything and saying how much she loved me. But she couldn't meet my eyes and looked away often. She was clearly nervous. When I got frustrated and swore, she would hunch her shoulders and avoid looking at me. It made me angrier than arguing would have. Once I mentioned finding a place to live after I left the hospital. Carol turned pale and started breathing fast but didn't say anything. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She just said she'd try to bring the kids to see me again. Ed and Carol seemed to get along fine, which surprised me. Ed knew what Carol had done, and he was very loyal to me. I watched them together, and they seemed like they always had. Carol was close friends with Ed's wife, and Ed had always liked Carol. Still, it felt odd. I decided to ask him about it when we were alone. A day later, just before I was to be released, Ed was with me. We were talking about the case we were working on when we were shot. Seems Booker set us up that day, partner. He says he heard we were going to arrest him and charge him with those murders. He didn't say where he got that idea, but now he knows it was nonsense. He never apologized, as you'd expect, but I could see in his eyes that he wanted revenge. You know what, partner? I called off the team. I just don't care anymore, and I'm not going to stop him this time. Let them shoot each other, see if I care. We've spent too much energy trying to stop those idiots from killing each other. Let them go at it. I agreed, even though it felt wrong to allow murder to happen. But sometimes you have to let things happen. Too many people would get hurt trying to stop something we couldn't prevent. So let them fight and let God deal with it. I nodded and agreed with him. I don't see any other way, Ed. I have to agree. Let them do what they will, and we'll sort it out later. Say, Ed, what's going on with you and Carol? I thought you'd be more upset with her. You don't have to hate her, but you two seem fine. Ed stared at me for a few moments, clearly thinking about what to say. I'd seen that look before when we questioned suspects. Ed was always careful with his words and kept his cool. He finally made up his mind. One thing I knew, I could trust whatever he told me. Pete, I have to tell you something important. You're my partner and I care about you. So here it is. I was the one who told Carol you were shot and in serious condition. Pete, she lost it. She broke down like she had been shot herself. I had to carry her to the couch. She was a mess. I called 911 and stayed until they arrived. I called Helen to get the kids when they came home from school. The emergency team got there and gave Carol a shot to calm her down because she was a total wreck. Pete, she was falling apart. I hope I never have to see that again. It made me rethink what we do. Anyway, it was clear to me that you mean everything to her. Just the thought of losing you almost broke her. Any woman who loves her man that much can't be all bad. You have to know she's torn up knowing she almost lost you twice. Once to divorce and once to a bullet. I don't know which hurt her more. She's been talking with Helen a lot, and Helen has forgiven her. I see how she's been there for you. So I have to say I support her. What you do is up to you, but know that whatever the reason she messed up, it's not because she doesn't love you. Oh yeah, one more thing. That lawyer is complaining that the cops are hard on him, but no one is listening. His law firm partners asked him to resign, and he's thinking about moving to another state. He heard that if he moves, the tiny bit of heroin found in his car during a traffic stop might disappear. Pete, you have many friends here and a woman who loves you deeply. Think about that. I watched him leave and thought about what to do. I was going to be released tomorrow and had to decide where to go. Living in the apartment at home seemed like the best option, but I wanted to be sure. I decided to talk to Carol when she came back. Carol walked in soon after and sat by the bed. She was quiet, and I looked at her closely. She looked tired and worried. Maybe it was about me, or maybe about the divorce. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. That's what infidelity does. Makes you lose trust and confidence. Carol, you know I'm being discharged tomorrow? She looked up and met my eyes. I know. What do you want to do? What do you want me to do? She took my hand and said, I want you to come home where you belong. Our home, yours and mine, where I can take care of you and the kids can see you're back with us and that everything will be okay. That's what I wanted too. I remembered my last thought before getting shot. I regretted not trying to fix things and not forgiving her. I felt the pain of possibly losing them all. Maybe getting shot was a wake-up call, a reminder that I could lose everything in an instant. I didn't want to die alone. My dad once told me, do you want to be angry or happy? You can't be both. He was right. Carol deserved a chance to explain herself and a second chance. I had no right to judge her alone. We were in this marriage together, with kids and a home. It wasn't just about me. She broke our marriage vows, but we both promised to stick it out through good and bad times. I couldn't just pick and choose the parts I liked. Okay, let's go home. Let's try to get past this and make it work. I'm willing to try. Her look of love and devotion made me believe we had a chance. A real chance to stay together as a family. Epilogue. I did come back home and I got better from my gunshot wound. In 4 weeks, I was back doing desk work, and in 6 months, I returned to full duty. Ed and I solved cases, and I got promoted to lieutenant. Ed became a first-class detective, but decided to stop there. That was his choice. Eventually, I was promoted to captain and got my own division. Life went on. I missed being out in the field, but this job was much safer. Carol was very happy when I got my promotion. I understood why, especially on cold days when my chest hurt. Carol and I worked hard to learn to be a couple again. Her new job was tougher, but also clearer. She made sure I always knew where she was and never stayed late without calling me. She introduced me to all her coworkers and made it a point to tell me who they were. She told me to call her any time, for any reason, and she always answered. She did everything she could to make me trust her again, and in time, I did. 3 months after I returned home, we became close again. It took longer than I thought because I kept having bad memories. Before we got close, I asked Carol to tell me everything about her time with Jeff. She hated it, but she did it. And it wasn't as bad as I imagined. I had nightmares for a while, some about getting shot and some about Carol and her lover. I can't say which were worse. Carol seemed to know when the dreams were about her and tried hard to be loving during those times. It did help a bit. Trying new things together also helped. As Carol said, I was her first in all those new things. That made me feel good. We got back to almost where we were before her affair. Our kids grew up, went to high school, then college, and we stayed together. The kids got married, had grandchildren, and we stayed together. We were husband and wife. We loved and cared for each other. But here's the thing. We never fully went back to how it was. There was always a small doubt in my mind every time she was late or out past her return time. I watched her at parties or barbecues. I wondered who called when the phone rang and she answered it. At odd times, I looked at her face when she wasn't aware. I hesitated when she said she wanted to go out with friends and stayed awake when she was out late. It was hardest at first, but got better with time. Did she ever cheat again? No, I knew she never did and never would. She once told me that the worst part of cheating wasn't getting caught, paying a price, or losing my trust. She said those things would slowly heal and I could even believe in her again. The worst part, she said, was seeing the pain in my eyes when I found out. She said she never forgot that and it still woke her up at times. She said she saw the occasional doubt in my eyes even years later. The pain she felt when she saw it was worse than any pain she had ever felt. Worse than childbirth, she said. So we both paid a price for her mistakes. Both of us. Are we happy together? Yes. We are happy and where we want to be, with each other. But could it have been better? Yes, if she hadn't cheated, it would have been better. I still sometimes feel angry about the loss, but I did say for better or worse. Choices have consequences. Hey, audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.